Today, we're diving deep into the hidden messages from Eiichiro Oda in the tragic life of Bartholomew Kuma. You might think you know, but let's uncover every detail of Kuma's life and reveal how he's impacted the One Piece narrative. We'll revisit Kuma's quotes and depictions, and get to the bottom of the mysteries behind this cyborg transformation. In this video, you'll get a sense of the intentions Oda-sensei has woven into Kuma's life, and we'll unravel how it all intertwines with the One Piece storyline. If you find this video intriguing, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe to the channel. Got any theories or points you think I might have missed? Drop them in the comments. Just a heads up, this video contains spoilers up to chapter 1098, so watch out. Let's get right to it. Kuma was born in the Sorbet Kingdom of South Blue, and his birth was depicted in chapter 1095. The happy faces of his parents, Father Clap and his mother, were truly memorable. Though he was meant to lead a happy life, filled with his parents' love, the chapter was ominously titled, "A World Better Off Dead." Shortly after Kuma's birth, it was discovered by the world government that his father belonged to the Buccaneers tribe, a lineage within Kuma as well. It seems there was an informant for the government at the hospital where Kuma was born. The Buccaneers tribe was once a clan that committed great sins against the world and is now considered an extinct species. From birth, Kuma was treated as a slave because of this. His father tried to protect his wife and Kuma, but eventually the entire family was enslaved by the celestial dragons. To make matters worse, they were forced to live apart from each other, a truly cruel fate. When Kuma finally met his father again, after a long time, he was told of his mother's death. "Mom's dead. She's in heaven now," his father said through tears. "It's better that way." The image of Kuma crying out upon hearing this still haunts me. Even then, his father tried to cheer him up by telling him about the sun god Nika, a legend passed down in the Buccaneers tribe, singing and dancing to the rhythm of Don Doto, Don Doto. But during this, a celestial dragon shot and killed Kuma's father right in front of him. That scene sent chills down my spine. Thus, Kuma grew up as a slave, unable to live with his family, and experiencing the death of his parents at a young age. Losing his father right before his eyes at such a tender age, it's a wonder his heart didn't break. 38 years ago, in a country called God Valley in the West Blue, a horrendous event took place where the celestial dragons massacred the native people. Young Ivankov also appeared at this time. God Valley was not a member of the world government, but it was chosen as a stage for this hunting event because of its abundant resources, which the world government wanted to seize. The targets were not just the citizens of God Valley, but also problematic slaves and criminals. Kuma and Ivankov were among the slaves sent to God Valley. There, Kuma first met Ivankov and Bonnie's mother, Ginny. This is where the story takes a dramatic turn. Ivankov gathered the slaves and began discussing the true brutality of this event and a plan to escape from God Valley. The key to escape was a pawpaw fruit and fish fruit, which were prizes in the event. The plan was for one of the slaves to eat these devil fruits and use their powers to evacuate the people. It reminds me of the time in Sabaody Archipelago when Kuma sent the Straw Hat crew far away to save them. 2 weeks before the event, Ginny had leaked information about these prizes outside the island, plunging God Valley into chaos. The Rocks Pirates and Roger Pirates arrived, turning it into a true all-star gathering. The celestial dragons' hunting plans were thrown into disarray. In the midst of this chaos, Kuma successfully ate the pawpaw fruit. Thanks to him, not just Kuma, Ivankov, and Ginny, but also over 500 people's lives were saved. Ivankov even called Kuma's hands the hands of liberation. After this event, Kuma and Ginny separated from Ivankov and began a new life together in the Sorbet Kingdom, despite being children. The sight of the two of them eating their fill and crying tears of happiness is unforgettable. It was probably the first time they experienced true freedom. Kuma's childhood home was actually a church, where he and Ginny lived together peacefully. This explains why Kuma was always seen carrying a Bible. At 17, Kuma and 21-year-old Ginny used the powers of the pawpaw fruit to alleviate various people's ailments and pains. Kuma served as a pastor, helping the people of the Sorbet Kingdom. It was always a wonder why he only healed sickness and pain on Sundays, but the astonishing reason soon became clear. The clusters of suffering and pain he removed wouldn't disappear until someone else took them on. If left alone, they would return to the original person, as he mentioned. Ginny, moved to tears by Kuma's self-sacrifice for others. Well, honestly, it's quite emotional. This reminds me of the Thriller Bark incident where Kuma removed Luffy's pain, and Zoro endured it instead. The pawpaw fruit truly has an incredible power. As time passed and Kuma turned 22, his relationship with Ginny deepened, and she even suggested marriage. However, Kuma hesitated to marry. He loved Ginny, but chose a path that wouldn't bring unhappiness to her or their future children, considering his Buccaneers tribe lineage. This was also the time when he started admiring Dragon and the predecessor of the Revolutionary Army, the Freedom Fighters. From here, the relationship between Kuma and the Revolutionary Army begins to unfold. When Kuma was 25, a major incident occurred in the Sorbet Kingdom. A law was passed allowing people to freely exploit the island's southern region. This part of the island, inhabited mostly by the elderly and generating little revenue, was deemed a burden and essentially cut off, with only the northern part recognized as the Sorbet Kingdom. Outraged, Kuma initiated a rebellion against the kingdom. After the rebellion, Kuma was imprisoned, and Ginny, who protested and caused a disturbance, was also incarcerated with him. It was then that Dragon and Ivankov, leading the freedom fighters at the time, came to rescue Kuma and the others. This marked the beginning of Kuma and Ginny's days with the freedom fighters, which eventually evolved into the Revolutionary Army. Ginny, too, honed her skills and served as the commander of the Revolutionary Army's Eastern Army. It was striking in Chapter 1097 how Ginny eagerly awaited a reunion with Kuma after a long time. But right after that, it was revealed that Ginny had been abducted by the Celestial Dragons. About 2 years after Ginny was abducted by the Celestial Dragons, a message from her reached the Revolutionary Army saying she had returned to the lower world. But it wasn't good news. Ginny was seriously ill and had reached out to say goodbye. The scene of a dying Ginny, gasping for breath and bidding farewell over the phone, is heart-wrenching. Her words, "Please never come to see me," must have been so hard for her to say. Ginny's final words to Kuma, "I've always loved you," make it impossible to turn the page without tears. For a while, there were happy scenes of Kuma struggling with parenthood, but then it was revealed that Bonnie, too, suffered from the same illness as her mother Ginny. This event led Kuma to leave the Revolutionary Army to focus solely on caring for Bonnie. In subsequent scenes, Kuma is seen cheerfully asking Bonnie, "Where would you like to go on a trip once you're well?" He also happily told her the story of Nika, singing Don Doto, Don Doto. But a year later, another dramatic twist awaited. King Bakori of the Sorbet Kingdom began killing citizens deemed unnecessary to the country. The next chapter seems likely to reveal even more episodes related to Kuma. His life has already been shown to be incredibly tumultuous. Even Morley of the Revolutionary Army said, "Kuma's life is the very embodiment of the world government's sacrifice." It's heartbreaking to think that, if not for the world government, Kuma might have had a happy life. As we've seen, Kuma was truly a kind-hearted person, but his initial appearance didn't give off that impression at all. He first appeared after Crocodile was defeated by Luffy in Alabasta when the 7 warlords were summoned to Mary Joa. Though he appeared several times in the story and was known as a Tyrant Kuma, he was referred to as a man who committed the utmost cruelty. In Chapter 1064, Jinbei even mentioned that Kuma was banished from his country and became a pirate. Honestly, the title Tyrant seems like a significant misunderstanding. It's likely that future episodes will clarify this, possibly revealing some scheme by the world government. The reason behind Kuma's cyborg transformation is also intriguing. Let's recap that for a moment. In Chapter 560, it was said that Kuma volunteered to become a cyborg. Frankie hinted in Chapter 603 that Kuma might have been blackmailed into it. In Chapter 1064, it was explained that he agreed to body modification and participating in clone development in exchange for returning to the sea as a Seven Warlord. It doesn't seem like he was forced into becoming a cyborg. As Chapter 713 revealed, Seven Warlords and their subordinates are granted amnesty. Kuma might have chosen to become a warlord and a cyborg with the intention of protecting someone. He's the type to self-sacrifice for others. Thinking about who he wanted to protect, it seems likely to be either the Sorbet Kingdom or Bonnie. If he became a cyborg to protect the Sorbet Kingdom, it's truly sad that he's still called a tyrant, even if it was a mistake. Regarding Bonnie, she was suffering from the same incurable disease as Ginny, but she seems healed now. This might suggest some connection between Kuma's cyborg transformation and her recovery. There could have been some negotiation with the world government. Bonnie too thought Kuma was forcefully modified, but perhaps she learned something from his memories. We've summarized Kuma's past and pondered the reasons behind his cyborg transformation. Now let's revisit Kuma's scenes in the story with this new understanding. The perspective on him is likely to change drastically. Remember, Kuma is a kind, self-sacrificing person who admired Dragon and Nika. Let's start by revisiting the scene at Thriller Bark, during the battle between Luffy's crew and Moria. When Nami asked Kuma about his intentions, he responded, "What I do is my own business." At Thriller Bark, Kuma was a warlord and thus ostensibly bound to obey the government's directives. Yet for Kuma, who grew up as a slave, to utter the word freedom carries profound significance. It suggests that he wasn't merely a puppet of the government. He chose not to annihilate the Straw Hat crew, but rather to spare them. Kuma proposed to the pirates, "I'll spare your lives. In exchange, hand over Straw Hat Luffy to me." But everyone refused. Then Kuma expressed regret and unleashed his Ursus shock on everyone. However, this regret takes on a deeper meaning when you know Kuma's past. By then, Kuma was aware that Luffy was Dragon's son, saying, "You're definitely his son." It seems likely that Kuma never intended to take Luffy's head. Known for not wanting to harm others, and with his hands termed as Hands of Liberation, it could be that harming them as a warlord was what he found regrettable. Knowing Kuma's past, I can't help but read his words in this new light. While his words initially seemed menacing, this perspective allows for a completely different interpretation. Another significant moment at Thriller Bark is when Zoro offered his own life to Kuma in exchange for sparing Luffy. This was when Kuma removed Luffy's damage with his ability, and Zoro stepped in to bear that damage himself. Kuma's words in this scene were, "Trust what I do. I'll keep my promise. But in exchange, I will show you hell." Remember, Kuma had previously taken away the suffering of the elderly at the church and then bore it himself. Just like then, the pain he removed had to be borne by someone. Having experienced it himself, he referred to it as a hell-like suffering. However, when he was talking on others' pain at the church, he probably didn't consider it hell. Seeing others happy might have brought him a joy akin to being in heaven. After all, Kuma had said, "Nothing makes me happier than seeing everyone else happy." Returning to the scene, Kuma, who admired Dragon, was probably also testing how much Luffy, Dragon's son, was cherished by his crew. He might have wanted to see if Zoro's feelings for Luffy were genuine. After witnessing the crew's willingness to sacrifice themselves for their captain, Kuma muttered, "You are indeed Dragon's son." Another unmissable moment is Kuma's line at Sabaody Archipelago, when the Straw Hat crew was battling Kizaru and the Pacifists. "If you were to go on a journey, where would you like to go?" That scene, with members of the Straw Hat crew disappearing one by one, was truly terrifying. But ultimately, Kuma's intention was to help them escape, allowing Luffy and his crew to train for 2 years and become stronger. The same phrase, If you were to go on a journey, where would you like to go? Was also said by Kuma to young Bonnie in chapter 1098. Even as he was becoming a pacifista, losing his personality, he continued to ask this question. Knowing Kuma's past, this becomes an incredibly emotional statement. His love for his daughter Bonnie must be undying. In chapter 603, Frankie recalls Kuma whispering to Raleigh, "I am an officer of the Revolutionary Army. I have a connection with this crew and want to help them escape. I don't have much time left." When you consider these words in conjunction with his past, it's deeply moving. As he was on the verge of becoming a complete cyborg, he must have held on to some hope and decided to entrust the future to the Straw Hat crew. I also think that Kuma might have known about the true nature of the fruit Luffy ate, which was actually the human fruit, model Nika. Kuma, familiar with the legend of Nika and connected to the government, might have had some knowledge about it. Statement, "I have a connection with this crew and want to help them escape," could imply that he knew not just about Luffy being Dragon's son, but also about Nika. The recent revelation that Kuma admired Nika adds a new layer to the interpretation of these events at Sabaody Archipelago. Now, let's shift to Sabaody Archipelago 2 years later. This is after the Straw Hat crew was scattered by Kuma, as depicted in chapter 603. The first to return to the Thousand Sunny was Frankie. There, he encountered Kuma in a battered state. Kuma uttered, "I was waiting. Mission complete." There was a promise made between Kuma and Vegapunk during his modification. A program was implanted in Kuma to defend the pirate ship until someone from the Straw Hat crew returns. Kuma was entrusting his hopes in Luffy and his crew to such an extent. Frankie speculated on the reason, saying, "All I can think of is that Luffy's father is the boss of the Revolutionary Army." However, it's hard to believe that Kuma would guard the ship for 2 years solely because Luffy is Dragon's son. There seems to be more to it than what Frankie's words explained. As mentioned earlier, Kuma might have hoped for Luffy to become Nika and liberate the world. This interpretation becomes possible only after knowing Kuma's past. Finally, let's look at the scene from chapter 1072, where Kuma, who disappeared from the Kamabaka Kingdom, is seen climbing the Red Line. Rescued from Mary Joa and repaired in the Kamabaka Kingdom, why did he return to Mary Joa? A possible reason could be a planned attack on Mary Joa, perhaps to exact revenge on the Celestial Dragons or to free the remaining slaves. Even with his self-consciousness gone, Kuma's deep-seated feelings might not have completely vanished. This act of climbing the Red Line reminds us of Fisher Tiger, the fishman who climbed it barehanded to invade the Holy Land of Mary Joa and free the slaves. In chapter 521, Hancock revealed to Luffy, "There was a man who climbed the Red Line with his bare hands and invaded the Holy Land of Mary Joa alone. That man was Fisher Tiger, the captain of the Sun Pirates. Like Tiger, who freed many slaves, Kuma might have had a similar wish." However, in chapter 1092, upon reaching Mary Joa, Kuma was attacked by a Kainu and once again vanished somewhere by using his own ability. Perhaps he went to Egghead, where Bonnie was in danger. As Vegapunk mentioned in chapter 1061, the desires of a living being cannot be controlled. Kuma's wish to free slaves and his love for his daughter might be beyond control. In chapter 1078, the narration hinted that the events unfolding at Egghead would bring an unexpected shock to the world. The possibility of Kuma arriving at Egghead seems quite unlikely. Kuma undoubtedly holds a key role in the story. Despite not being a Straw Hat member, his past is elaborated in great detail, indicating the significance of his character in Oda's writing. Reviewing Kuma's actions and words, we see that everything he does is meaningful. He is kind, self-sacrificing, filled with the desire to liberate slaves, a loving father, and someone who dreams of the return to Nika. How will he interact with Luffy? The embodiment of Nika is something we can't take our eyes off. So what are your thoughts on these speculations? That's all for today. This channel posts summaries, explanations, and ranking videos related to One Piece. If you like One Piece, we would be happy if you could support us by subscribing to our channel and commenting. Thank you for watching till the end. See you in the next video.